Well, that's how we're going to start that one. My name is Cameron. This is a whole lot of Kalamata. I am going to be reading Genesis 9 and 10 today. And there goes my cat opening up doors with his opposable thumbs. Going to be utilizing MacArthur's ESV Bible for this, reading chapters 9 and 10. The fair use of the ESV Bible states that you can use up to 500 verses before you are in violation of their particular stipulations, I guess you could say. So, that being said, chapter 9, and God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. There's a changing in the relationship that mankind has with animals. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. And for your lifeblood I will require reckoning. From every beast I will require it, and from man. From his fellow man I will require reckoning for the life of man. So it specifically calls out, for your lifeblood I will require reckoning. So there's consequences. Verse 6, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image. And you, be fruitful and multiply, increase greatly on the earth, and multiply in it. That repetition, like we're talking about, maybe the translation is not necessarily the best, or maybe it's just God needed to utter the command multiple times. Not sure. I guess there were other hobbies to pursue besides procreation. Joke, joke, wink, wink. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth with you. As many as came out of the ark, it is for every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. So, interesting commentary there. The specific promise of this covenant never to destroy the world again by water was qualified by the means, for God has since promised to destroy the earth with fire one day. 2 Peter 3, 10 through 11, Revelations chapter 20, verse 9, and it looks like chapter 21, verse 1. So that's awesome. No water, just fire. Going to verse 12. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all generations, all future generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, a rainbow, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth. Going over the commentary for verse 16, this divinely originated covenant in Scripture, explicitly described as everlasting, has to do with the Abrahamic covenant, the Davidic covenant, and the New Jerusalem, or New Covenant, rather. They abbreviated Jeremiah. So it's Jeremiah 32, verse 40, specifically is what they're citing for the New Covenant. This term everlasting can mean either to the end of time and or through eternity future. Never explicitly looks back to eternity past. Of the 6 explicitly mentioned covenants of this kind in Scripture, only the Mosaic or Old Covenant was nullified. Kind of fascinating call out as far as nullifying God's oath or promises to people. Verse 18. The sons of Noah who went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan, or Canaan. These 3 were the sons of Noah, and from these the people of the whole earth were dispersed. Noah began to be a man of the soil and planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backward, covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah woke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan. A servant of servants shall be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be the Lord and God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Quickly visiting some of the commentary before visiting chapter 10. Verse 18 of chapter 9. Canaan's offspring, the idolatrous enemies of Israel, whose land Abraham's descendants would later take in Genesis 15, verses 13 through 16, became a primary focus in chapter 10. This notion is important since Moses was writing the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. So Genesis is included in the Pentateuch. Just before Moses was writing the Pentateuch, just before the Israelites took Canaan. Verse 22, in regards to seeing his father's nakedness, specifically, it was Ham saw his father's nakedness. There's no reasonable support for the notion that some perverse activity, in addition to seeing nakedness, occurred. But clearly, the implication is that Ham looked with some sinful thought, if only for a while, until he left to inform his brothers. This is the commentary making an interpretation here. It's not necessarily guaranteed biblical, but they say perhaps, it's a key word right there, he was glad to see his father's dignity and authority reduced to such weakness. And it does leave you wondering, if that is the case, was there some instance where Ham was acting out in the sense of defiance for, hey, I don't want to go inside the ark. This is ridiculous. I don't believe you. And that kind of paints a little bit different of a backstory or different family dynamics. Regardless, the book does not say, and it may be just in an effort to keep Ham out of that spotlight, because what ends up being pronounced, it says, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall be to his brothers." And then let Canaan be his servant later on. May God enlarge Japheth and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be a servant. It repeatedly says, you are going to be a servant. You are going to be a servant. And I think that's kind of odd when we read it at face value. I'm not going to lie. It's just kind of like so chronologically, and I don't mean in the sense of the order of sequence, but I'm just saying time-wise, removed, that it's like hard to read and being like, dude, you just saw your dad naked. Like, I don't see what the big deal is, but it could have been a source of repeated mockery. And so he's cracking jokes to his brothers, like, oh, look at him. He's drunk. He's, acting out. He's foolish. And then it's like, dude, you just witnessed the entire destruction of mankind, and you're here cracking jokes about your father having a drink. Like, yeah, I'd want to drink too if I just witnessed all of humanity get destroyed. And then God had to save me. And I was cooped up inside of an ark with you making fun of me for how many days no long. Yeah, I'd probably be pronouncing curses too. So going on, verse 25, when he's pronouncing those curses that I just read prior to my little dissertation there, in my opinion, here God gave Israel the theological basis for the conquest of Canaan. The descendants of Ham had received a sentence of judgment for the sins of their progenitor, not proto, but progenitor. Verse 6, let Canaan be his servant. Conquered peoples were called servants, even if they were not household or private slaves. Shem, the ancestor of Israel, the other Semites, we get anti-Semitical, which we often hear about. It's in regards to Shem or Semites, were to be masters of Ham's descendants, the Canaanites. The latter, Ham's descendants, Canaanites, would give their land to the former, Shem or the Semites. When he says in verse 27, dwell in the tents, the line of Shem from which the Messiah would come. So of these 3 children, Jesus comes from the line of Shem. All right. Let's hit up chapter 10. So you're going to have to bear with me here. There's a bunch of names in chapter 10 of Genesis, some of which I might butcher. But That's what happens when you speak Americanese or English and don't know how to pronounce some of these pieces of language. Verse 1, chapter 10 of Genesis. These are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Sons were born to them after the flood. The sons of Japheth: Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tyrus. The sons of Gomer: Ashkenaz, Ripath, and Togarmah. The sons of Javan: Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. From these, the coastland people spread in their lands, each with his own language, by their clans in their nations. The sons of Ham: Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. The sons of Cush: Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Raama, Sabteka. The sons of Raama, it's two A's, Raamah, Sheba, and Dedan. Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man. Very interesting when they mention Nimrod, he actually wears in the apocryphal book, again, not biblical canon, not ratified as per the Septuagint to the Council of Troy and Nicaea. He actually wears the same clothing that Adam and Eve had made by God from, I believe, animal skins, if memory serves me correctly. Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it was said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Makes me wonder, just like how Satan has tried to reduce Jesus Christ to a curse word, is that what we did with Nimrod? When we called somebody a Nimrod, was there some element there? And that's historically, that's going back, because I know kids aren't saying Nimrod nowadays, but I'm just saying, you heard it in comic strips or read about it in comic strips, and then you heard it every once in a blue moon from some old, generationally removed person calling somebody basically an idiot. Verse 10, the beginning of his kingdom, referring to Nimrod, was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. From the land he went into Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah, and that is in the great city. Rezin was Resen for, I believe, the city name, because it says and then goes right to verse 12, so it's a little bit weird because it's not a complete thought or sentence. Going to verse 13, Egypt fathered Ludim, Anamim, Lahabim, Nephituhim, Pathrusim, and Casluhim, from whom the Philistines came, and Caphtorim. Turn the page there. A lot more names. We're almost done. Halfway there. Canaan fathered Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusites, and the Amorites, and the Girgashites, and the Hivites, and the Arkites, and the Sinites, and the Arvadites, and the Zemarites, and the Hamathites. It's a lot of ites. Afterwards, the clans of the Canaanites dispersed, and the territory of the Canaanites extended from Sidon in the direction of Gerar, as far as Gaza, and in the direction of Sodom, Gomorrah, Adamah, Zeboim, and as far as Lashash. These are the sons of Ham by their clans, their language, their lands, and their nations. So I think that by having the differentiation between the ach or the ad, because I'm seeing Ehadel, like Nineveh or Kalah, if I'm pronouncing that right. Calah. There's like a differentiation in the suffix, the words that follow afterwards, specifically. The Jebusites, Amorites, like that doesn't have that same EHAH, or even the Rehoboth so just kind of different, and maybe that was a way of distinguishing the different tribes and people that were dwelling there. Picking up verse 21, to Shem also the father of all the children of Eber, the elder brother of Japheth, children were born. The sons of Shem, Elam, Ashur, Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. The sons of Aram, Uz, Hol, Gether, and Mash. Arpachshad fathered Shelah, and Shelah fathered Eber. To Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Joktan fathered Almodad, Shelef, as has. Man, they're just trying to throw every monkey wrench they can in terms of tongue twisting. And I bet somebody up in heaven is just laughing right now. Like, bro, he doesn't know what he's saying. He doesn't know it all. And that's fine. Again, not super well studied on the different lineages, tribes, or pronunciation as far as the language goes. Hazar Maveth, Jerah, Hadaram, Uzal, Diklah, Obal, Abimael, and Sheba. Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. Interesting thing about Ophir, that does become a place, and they mention the gold of Ophir in Solomon's temple. It's just kind of cool to hear like the origin stories, I guess. The territory in which they lived extended from Mesha in the direction of Sephar to the hill country of the east. These are the sons of Shem, by their clans, their languages, their lands, and their nations. These are the clans of the sons of Noah, according to their genealogies, in their nations, and from these nations spread abroad on the earth after the flood. So a bit of background as far as speeding things up, rather than going in very deep, kind of like the difference between Genesis 1 and 2, where it's like, hey, God did this is on the cosmic level or the macro level, and then this is what was happening in detail on chapter 2 of Genesis, where it's the micro level. It's more specific, it's more detailed. We're seeing that happen from verse 9 to verse 10. It's going from more micro, hey, just Noah and his sons, to that macro level again in Genesis 10. So going to look over the commentary, see if there's anything even worth going in there. All right, so there is some good commentary in here, at least for perspective. When it brings up verse 8 through 10, Nimrod, specifically that verse, it says, this powerful leader was evidently the force behind the building of Babel, specifically quoting further commentary on Babel, the beginning of what later would prove to be Babylon, which ends up kidnapping Israel and obliterating their city, Jerusalem. It says circa 605 to 539 BC. Nimrod's name specifically means rebel in Hebrew. And then for the later verses of verses 15 through 19, it says a notable shift occurs in the section away from the names of the inhabitants themselves, the ones ending in ites. These are not only the cursed people of Canaan's curse for that issue when it came to Noah's drunkenness, but also they are those who possess the promised land that Israel as a nation needs to end up defeating. Noah's curse alone didn't determine their guilt, but does say, for God said to Abraham that the iniquity of the Amorites must first be complete before the descendants of Abraham could occupy the promised land. Specifically, going off of those verses where they was talking, or the commentary that was talking about areas. So like Babel would become Babylon. Magog is right next to Turkey. And at least according to Jack Hibbs, Gog is Russia. Like you got Ashur ends up becoming Assyria. Joktan becomes Arabia. Egypt obviously becomes, well, Egypt. But it just kind of goes to show some of these differences. Like Elam becomes Persia. Medai, I don't know how it's Madai, becomes the Medes. So kind of interesting seeing the map there. I would show it, but at the same time, helps kind of give perspective as far as nations that they have developed into where they originally got their names. So fascinating stuff. The next one is on the Tower of Babel. So as you can hear in verse 10, we're doing the macro, micro thing kind of again, because the Tower of Babel is headed up by Nimrod. So it introduces the character on the macro level, and then it gets into the details of what happened there. So that will be for the next verse. I will be using, I think it's the LSV Bible. I might be wrong on that, but I think it's like literal scriptural translation. Either way, if I'm wrong on that, I'll happily introduce which version I'll be using. But that'll be for the next 10 chapters. Appreciate you joining me. God bless. Have a great day.